What's going on today, Internet? Selfish here with Retrospect. I noticed that there's a few videos up right now talking about how to install KNULLI on your RG40xx handhelds, as some of the early releases have come out now and are available to the public, which is fantastic. What I've also noticed is that nobody's actually telling you what KNULLI does or why you might actually want it on your handheld. So I thought we'd touch on that today. Let's take a look. KNULLI is a great custom firmware for a lot of people. If it's not even just the aesthetics of it, because KNULLI is based off of Batocera, you're getting that emulation station type front end. So it is going to be a graphical upgrade for a lot of people as far as what your screen looks like while you're staring at it. This already looks better than the stock OS. Now they've made a lot of improvements to stock OS lately, not necessarily in the looks department, but it is operating better than it has in the past. And I've done videos on doing modified stock OS, and that's still a thing. And I've noticed that the stock OS, and I've talked about this before, is starting to incorporate parts of modified stock into the actual OS from Anbernic. So it is getting better every time they do a new release. And there was actually a new release done today. But as I was saying before, KNULLI does look like that emulation station front end, so you are getting a much better graphical user interface. Now, if it's just a graphical user interface, I would think that you're wasting your time, but there are some performance increases here as well, and I think that you could take advantage of those. And that's kind of what I'm going to touch on here today. But I'm going to go more housekeeping type stuff that maybe makes your life a little bit easier once you get everything set up on KNULLI, just for the fact that there may be some features and things on here that you didn't even know were available that will now be available to you that weren't before. So we already touched on the themes, which I think is great. Another big part of KNULLI is PortMaster. Now, you can work ways to get PortMaster to work on the factory OS, but it is already built into KNULLI. So the cool thing about PortMaster is it gives you access to up to 500 games depending on the handheld. I'm not exactly sure how many are on the 40xx series yet, but it will continue to increase as time goes on, because they do have to optimize them pretty much per device, but up to 500 games per handheld that are older computer games. Some aren't even that old, but for instance, I play like Half-Life on all my handhelds because I have a computer copy of it and I just have to copy those files into the directory on here, and it actually optimizes it to be able to play on a handheld like this, or any handheld that is supported by PortMaster. One game for PortMaster that I found myself recently addicted to, and I believe it was Russ from Retro Game Core that actually pointed this game out, and now I can't stop playing it, is this emoji game where you just have to get these cute little emojis to turn into even cuter little emojis. It's kind of like a Tetris game, but not really, but they do build off each other, so it is kind of a builder game, which is somewhat neat, I guess. It's just more a matchy-matchy builder game. There's a little bit of physics involved, because you gotta try to figure out where to drop everything. So this is just one example, but you can really get a lot out of PortMaster. And so this is one of the big things with KNULLI, and a lot of people like PortMaster, but if you're not familiar with it, it's definitely worth it. You're also going to find some free games on here as well. I usually load Commander Keen on here. Yeah, I did put him on here. So Commander Keen is one of my favorite games from childhood. I used to play this back on our old 286 or 386. I can't remember which of the two had it on there. Probably the 386. I don't know if it came with it or if we got CD in the mail or something. There wouldn't have been a CD. I guess we got the floppy in the mail, and my assumption would be that would be the 3.5-inch floppy. I'm not sure. Definitely not a CD though. There was no CD drive at that time. But a game that I grew up playing, and over the years as I migrated through different computer systems, I always played this as like a DOS-based game. So very cool to have this on here, and it really brings back those feels for one of the first computer games I really do remember from childhood. Now moving on to some other things on here, you do get some more overlay options as part of having KNULLI on here. So as you're playing different gaming systems, you do get some overlays, which are pretty awesome. You also do get access to SCUMV, which is going to be more like point-and-click based computer games. Pico 8, you've heard me talk about on the channel before. If you're new here, I talk about Pico 8 fairly frequently, probably about every third video or so. I mentioned something with Pico 8 because I think it's amazing. For $15, the fantasy console, you get pretty much unlimited games. I don't even know how much. There's over 8,000, I think, on there now. Maybe even more than that. And there's so many like demakes and remakes and stuff on there. It's so cool to go on there and just play and see what you can find. You can go through the new stuff, and so you have access to the full Pico 8 library right from this handheld, which is awesome. Some other things too is you do get some updated sleep shutdown modes, so your buttons for sleep and shutdown it actually does work, so it does still show your green light and everything, but this does preserve battery power now and bounces right back into where I was. A fast shutdown, and then you do get that save shutdown option as well, and you'll see those here under the quit menu. So if you want, you can suspend your system, which is what that button does. Otherwise you get a shutdown system, or you do fast, which doesn't save anything. It just rickrolls its way right to having the screen turn off and everything else like that. So you do have some options there. This does have updated emulators, so the emulators are actually better than what came on the factory system. Now the factory system may have just gotten that updated. I know there was some PSP stuff in the changelog, so that may have been updated. There's a lot of errors in the PSP play on the stock OS. Those have been fixed within this operating system, so that's pretty awesome as well. It allows for many, many more systems. I think it's up to 60, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. You do now get better HDMI support. They did just fix that. It's actually fixed in a patch, but it will be on a future release. Where the HDMI will also sync with colors for your ring on here as well as your screen, so your brightness will all kind of match up, which is being added to that as well. And I think that they're calling that the version 14 patch or 14 update. I guess it's not really a patch because it will be part of the next build that goes out, as well as some updated things for this ring here. Gamma actually helped them out, and now your screen and your LED will match, or you have the option to make them match as far as brightness goes. So say you go to bed and you don't want to wake your significant other up. If you turn down the brightness, your LED brightness will also turn down. So you don't still have this blaringly bright LED while your partner's trying to sleep next to you. That will also turn down with the screen, not something that's available in the stock OS. There's a lot more network tools and SSH logins and stuff, so you can actually drag and drop your files over the air into the handheld, which is actually the easiest way to do it. KNULLI has left the directory system set up in Linux, so some things aren't going to work when you try to plug in your memory card or try to plug your device into your computer to transfer. It is actually recommended, and the easiest way to do it is just directly over the air. Now, they've also added some other things to this that I think are really important, and they're things like SyncThing, and we'll go here. They'll be under, I believe, the bottom here under services. You got different simulators. You got your Wi-Fi. I don't know what LED Spicer is, but SyncThing I use to save across all my handhelds. I cross-save my RetroArch files and some of my other files out of like PPSP, and I use that so it has one database on one main computer. So I've got, actually I just have a mini PC that I did a review on a while back that just kind of runs as like a network PC at my house, and all my save files go to that. So anytime I get off of a game or I do a save, it goes to that over the air. So say you play this for, you know, a day, all day, and your battery finally dies, you go to plug it in, you pick up your H, and you're still playing in the same spot. Or if I start like a racing game on here, and I actually prefer to play my racing games on a horizontal handheld, I will just save it, come back over here, and just pick up where I left off. It's just one of those brain farts I get sometimes because I just kind of get into what I'm doing. But you can also do like win mode, stuff like that, and that's all available here underneath this services tab. So something you're definitely not going to see from the factory. One of the big things when it comes to visualization on these, and we'll just pick a, why am I scrolling? We'll just pick a system, PlayStation. So you can actually scrape for box art on here, which I know sounds not like a big thing, but it is when you just have lists of games. I'll give you an example. So here you can, for the most part, I was able to find everything. I got to fix my list a little bit, but, and actually I don't even know if I scraped this completely yet since I put some more PlayStation games on, but you get the idea. You can see, here we'll do PSP. You can see the box art going with the games, right? In fact, I know I didn't scrape the other one, but otherwise you're just looking through a list of stuff and there's nothing going on over here. And depending on the layout, it could be in a different spot, but you're not getting that visualization that really kind of pulls you in. Video games are very much judge a book by its cover, right? So you see something like, ooh, that's interesting. Let's see what that is. Versus trying to read through all the names and you don't know what half the stuff is. All of a sudden you're like, what is that name? And you look over and you're like, oh, that makes sense. You know, like that's kind of a lot of how video games go, because for some reason the devs on video games just love to give things creative and awkward names. And then on top of that, you do get additional resources inside of RetroArch. So there are some things that are kind of a little quirky in RetroArch on the stock OS. I'm not sure why. I run into a few things every once in a while. For some reason I haven't run into any on KNULLI. Now that doesn't mean that I guess necessarily it's changed, but I'm pretty sure that they're more open for you to be able to make changes with, because I know that Anbernic says that they don't lock anything down, but I'm constantly running into things that aren't working quite the same. They're quite the way I expect them to, but in KNULLI they seem to work just the way that I would expect them to. And then last but not least, I just want to give a shout out to TechDweeb, because he just did a video on reading books and comics on your handheld. I don't know if you follow my community post today, but I actually read a lot of comics on here as well. These are all comics I actually have. I don't actually have to really read them. I kind of just already know what's in them, but you can actually have it zoom in on your pages and stuff like that. So if the text is small or something like that or hard to read, you still have the ability to be able to do those things as well. It does create a library. You can put stuff on the factory OS. It's not nearly as well organized or pretty looking as it is on here. So that gives you kind of the nuts and bolts. There's a lot more you can do on here. I use retro achievements. So if you're a person that uses retro achievements, you're able to actually scrape your entire library. Let's see, which one won't have, we'll go PlayStation because I won't have a lot of them that have achievements. But you can go through and scrape your entire, well, here, I'll go PSP. And it'll actually put achievement bars next to anything you have. Now down here, it's going to give you an idea of everything for each file. So each file that you have, so like this one here, it's got achievements, so that one's highlighted, right? So each file will be updated and highlighted. So any of my racing games, if it's a racing game, the little car is on here that adds the car to let me know that it's a racing game. Gran Turismo, Ridge Racer, all that kind of stuff gets a little car, which is really neat. So then if you're in the mood for a racing game, which I often am, it's really easy for me to figure out where those racing games are. Also, if you wanted to do curated lists, you can actually create them by those categories. So you can choose a game. So for instance, I chose Ninja Turtles. I thought I had more than one on here, but I was just doing it as an example. Every Ninja Turtle game will come up on here. Now, I apparently had only put one on here at this point. I'll put more because I love every single Ninja Turtle game. But here's another one for you. So these are the Ghouls and Ghosts and Goblins. So now I've got all the different versions of that in one folder, and they're emulated different ways. So one's SNES, one's Final Burst Neo. So they're all different, and all I did was chose one of them and it creates a category for you. Either that library for that specific title and everything that goes with it, or you can choose by category, like racing or whatever, and it'll create those lists for you, which is super neat and super helpful. Try to have it make a Halloween list for me. It did not do such a thing. That's nor here nor there. There's also a couple of options here underneath the downloads in the main menu. This will give you things like your themes, the bezel project if you want to download bezels. There's also this content downloader, which is pretty sweet. There's some fan-made games in here. There's also some achievements, and there is a retroed version of Halo in here. I can't remember which system it's on, but they made like a 8 or 16-bit version of Halo. Some more tools that you can use, some different overlays, things like that. Really some cool stuff in here as well for a little bit of everything for every system. So something definitely worth going through. And like I said, you do have your themes and stuff. And then you also do have that update option where right here, if you have an update available, you can just do this update over the air. Some things that I am kind of a little disappointed in right now, but they are fixing this. So this is in that version 14 I talked about earlier. There are some issues, some known issues with the LED lights around here. Those are obviously going to be fixing that because they're also adding them to the dimming on this. Also, you can't really dim your screen right now. That's also fixed as part of that process. Like I said, the HDMI right now, it's not great, but it is being fixed in that version 14. It's already been tested. And again, you can download that quote-unquote not patch for it, and you can try it out that way. I'm not a big fan of how this now uses the function button as another dislike in the stock system, for instance. So if you're in this game and you want to get into RetroArch, you would just hit menu, and it's just not that easy anymore. So now it's what, menu X, I think? Nope, that's load. So menu B, there you go. So they've changed that, and I'm not a fan of that. And then instead of select start, but it's menu start to back out now of a game. Just some little like nitpicky things, but I've never been a fan of holding this button and using the face buttons versus just the start and select for getting in and out of games. As you saw, I just tried to load a game. I've also saved over my save file on accident by holding the menu button and hitting the wrong button. Now, that's something that goes away as you get used to using an operating system, and I understand that. And it just wasn't a problem for the basic things like getting in and out of stuff with the stock system, because it's literally a menu start select buttons, right? So you're not going to be dealing with your balancing buttons for, you know, fast forward, save, load, things like that aren't going to be a problem, because you're not touching those buttons or even anywhere near them, where, you know, if you just aren't paying attention, you miss hit, you could potentially save over your file. Now, you can always fix that in RetroArch as long as you do it right away. You can actually unsave it or unload as well. But if you don't catch it right away, like if you're not paying attention and I might hit the wrong button, I won't even notice, but I'll probably hit, you know, 2 buttons, and so it'll save where I didn't want it to, or load, and so I lose my progress because it loads back to a previous point probably where I started that whole game out anyways, and still exits. So all I notice is that it exits, but then I go in and I'm starting all over again. It only happened to me a couple times, but just something to be aware of. I don't know if they'll ever change that, but I am just not a fan of that. If I use it every day for a couple of days, I get really used to it, and it's just not even a problem then, but just something to think about. But I just wanted to give you a basic idea of some of the things you can get out of KNULLI that just aren't available in the stock OS. Maybe a couple of things that need to get fixed. There are a few more things that I can think of that need to get fixed, but this is a good baseline. This is a really early build, so if you're not somebody that likes things to tinker with, you may not be ready to put KNULLI on yet, but maybe here in the near future. And they're going to add some more features and things, and when that happens, I will gladly get on and talk more about KNULLI, and when it's a little bit more polished. But if you want to get in on the ground level and learn with the system as it's being built, now would be a good time to do that. But you are going to have to go through some of those headaches. Now, if you find yourself lost and you need to, I don't know, try to figure out what the button combinations are, for instance, all you got to do then is just hit the select button off this main screen. There is a user manual built in, so you just select that, and then you can just go through and it will actually tell you the different button configurations for navigation and things like that. Also talks a little about Kodi in here. I'm not using this to stream video, but it is of a video streamer if you want to use Kodi. A lot of people like to wear an eye patch and watch movies on Kodi, which is really weird because you'd only be able to see half the movie. But it is available on the handheld because it is built into Batocera, and it will talk to you a little bit about Kodi in here, and also your retro achievements, your screen scraper, and then net play if you want to play with other devices. So really some good information in here. But all you, again, just hit select here on the home screen. Choose the user manual right above airplane mode, just below launching your screensaver. And it's that easy. And yet I still forget to go in there and look so I can remember how my buttons are supposed to be mapped. But I just want to make this a real quick video here today, just so you kind of get an idea and you can decide if KNULLI is what you actually want to do on your handheld. We're all going to tell you it's going to be amazing. It is still kind of in that early infancy, but if you want to get on that ground level and tinker a little bit, now is your time to do it. Also, you can give some feedback to the team if you find things that are broken, things like that. Very helpful. They've got a Discord. They're very active on there, so I think that that's a very good thing. Kudos to the KNULLI team. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. You guys have made something solid here. I know you guys got a little bit left to do on here, but you're really creating some good things. Appreciate what you're doing. But if you have any questions about anything that I've talked about today, leave it down there in my comment section. And then I'm just going to wrap it up here today. If you liked what you saw here, rate this video and subscribe if you want to see some more content like this in the future. Also, don't forget to share this video with your friends, because sharing helps grow the channel, and sharing's caring, and we care about each other here. So, you know, the more you share, the more we can build our community. And there's a couple videos up here for you to watch on the screen that YouTube chose for you. But that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.